All right, there we go. Recording in progress. So let me go back to share my screen. Not that, this. All right, so in terms of WordPress news and events, as I kind of alluded to, it's a little quiet right now. The most recent event was that Page Builder Summit. I posted to that. I know we mentioned it last month in our meetup. I also posted a reminder to folks, and thanks to I think Bob reminded me about that in our Facebook group. So there were some good sessions there. I'm not positive. I think you can still maybe go back and view some of the more recent ones. No, Sue's shaking her head. No, I know you needed the Pro Pack thing, so sorry.
48 hours they gave it.
Yeah, so there were some good ones on there. Again, some general ones more for kind of agency type users, but there were also some more general ones, some decent ones in AI as well too. But besides that, I mean, the only recent news since last month is there was a point release, 6.8.1. Not a lot interesting in it that I have seen. I don't know if anyone else saw anything in it. It just seemed like regular bug fix release. As we talked about before, last month we went through 6.8 in a little bit of detail, but 6.8 seems like it's going to be the last major release for this year, at least. So there are going to be these point releases. If there's anything really of interest in them, we'll bring it up and go into more detail. But otherwise, I'm just bringing this up for awareness so that you, again, if you haven't looked at your site in a while, it may or may not have been updated to 6.8.1. Really, the only other thing I always like to cross promote other WordPress is like Sue was saying, the other WordPress meetup groups that are out there. And I know, Peter, you're a big proponent of this one in particular. I think you brought this one to my attention, at least the group. So the WordPress accessibility group seems like they have a great speaker coming up in June. It's Maria Maldonado is doing ARIA for beginners. I think Peter's talked a little bit about ARIA, I believe, in the past. So ARIA stands for accessible rich internet applications. It's a set of attributes that improves web accessibility for people using assistive technologies. Um, Peter, anything else to say just about ARIA in general? Just a high level?
So yeah, one of the rules they talk. So ARIA helps screen readers understand the content and present the content in a certain way. There was a statement made way back when in one of the presentations, might be by the same person. It was like the best aria is no aria. In fact, if you do, so sometimes aria is used, this coding is used to make something accessible when it could have been more accessible if done right in the first place. It's also, though, it is useful, and one of the more the least accessible of some of the accessibility topics, right? It's a little bit more like, because it's a kind of code. It's kind of, well, how do you put it in there and things like that. So definitely one to me that you kind of need to go over a few times to see how to best use it. It's nothing to really panic about, but at the same time, when you get really good at accessibility and then you start using tools like this, you really become very good at it. So
And I could be wrong, but I remember reading the description of this particular meetup. I think they may actually demonstrate some of those, like the reader technologies,
yeah,
which for somebody like myself who's never seen it and others who may not have seen it, I think that's really interesting just to be exposed to kind of understand how the technologies work. So
yeah, real quick, the accessibility
yeah,
to that was they've had some people demonstrating this where screen readers can, for experienced users, presents content reading out at a crazy speed. Like it feels like it's incomprehensible, but for the people who are using it, they're following it. It goes so fast, and it's a really interesting experience too. And then a lot of times in demo, they'll slow it down, kind of thing, to what they're used to. But um, it's a fascinating thing when you see somebody use a website using a screen reader and finding out all the issues that a website may have, and the traps that it can have, for example, where somebody gets into a sentence, go, I can't get out of here, I don't know where I am, that type of thing. So
yeah, definitely worth checking out. Again, if you search on Meetup, just search for the WordPress accessibility group meetup. And like I said, coming up June 5th at 11 Eastern time. So check that out. Tool and plugin spotlight. Peter, put you on the spot again. You got anything for us?
well, I was going to say the whole night is going to be on this.
That's
How's
true.
that?
We can jump. We can skip it. That's gonna be
Yeah,
our
yeah.
goal. let's jump
Because
into
I've
the
got like
topic.
bits and pieces over here, but I'll tell you what I would like to, and you probably were planning on saying this too, but if there's anybody who's running into a situation, right? So we can go through like tips and tricks, and I was going to approach some of it from like what I hear from other meetups where um, new WordPress users, they run into some of these issues where it's like, let's help you think about things a little bit differently, or kind of clarify things. So those are some of the topics that I'd like to cover. But I would love if people have any specific things from expert on down, we'll pull it out. I think we're doing summer school almost early, right?
Yeah.
But this idea of if there are any things that you're running to and you say, boy, is there a tip you can give me on this? Is there something I'm missing? That type of thing. Please, feel free to put it in the chat, or if we open it up, hands up, however you want to do it, Ray. But
Yeah.
that would help, because it's like, oh yeah, I've got something that I do, Ray, you've got something that you do that solves that problem. That kind of would be great to get that kind of interactivity. And I'll make one comment on that. Eagles in this call, it's really, really interesting to me how the West Coast meetups, they have people actually ask questions. This last meetup was a little light on that, but I find that really, really interesting. Where you know, the some of the groups get more specific questions, and I'm like, oh, I'd like to get one or two.
Our group's so polite. We're most of us are East Coasters. We just
Yeah, that's what it is. But
we're,
yeah, so if there's anything anybody kind of was curious about or running into or something like that, other than that, I mean, I was going to look at sites and go, hey, here's what I've done here, or that type of thing. I've got a few notes, obviously, but
so that's kind of segueing into, I guess, the context for tonight. So again, Peter came up with the title, the WordPress tips and tricks kind of jamboree. So this is kind of a grab bag. So again, if you're here for the first time, this is a little bit different than what we normally do. Typically, like Peter will do a tool or tip spotlight in the beginning. So this is a little bit more than that. We'll definitely talk about some tools and plugins and things like that. But it's a lot of the stuff that, like we've said before, we also often encounter little tips and things that don't really warrant a full topic discussion or full presentation. They're kind of things that we almost take for granted. So like I know when Peter and I talked about doing this one, like over the past week, I kind of was documenting projects I was working on, either my own site or client sites and things like that, and just noted, hey, here's something that I just do all the time, but maybe people aren't as familiar with. So just kind of throw that out there as a tip, or kind of something to share. So I don't know, Peter, do you want to jump in somewhere? We'll flip back and forth. You do one or
yeah,
two, and then flip back and forth to me, etc.
yeah. I mean, my first one here, I'll share screen, and this first one's going to be maybe a little weird for this group, and I'm looking at, I'm not sure what level everybody's on, but and some of this is repeating, but I realized, I was like, oh, I talked about this before, and then I realized I talked about this like 3-4 years ago. So it's amazing how time has flown. And when I think one of the first things that people encounter when they're coming against WordPress is, where do I get help, right? So some of the tips and tricks right out of the gate, it's the meetups. It's this meetup here. But I also, I have a shortcut for the upcoming meetups where I'm actually filtering it out. In fact, I could put this URL in, which is like, give me all the upcoming meetups that are in the US, Great Britain, Ireland, or US, Canada, sorry. And then I can look through, and I'm filtering it for all the online ones. This is where, Eagle he put a link into his help desk, which is fantastic, and I recommend anybody who hasn't experienced that, check out his link. He's also got links to other meetups that are kind of in this known favored group, and these are people who are there, willing to help, willing to ask answer the questions and all. So the meetups here, you'll see in Eagle's list the stuff that those meetups here, but that's when I see the Santa Cruz ones, things like that coming up, but I can recognize the ones. There's your area for beginners, but this is just a nice way of being able to stay on top of things like, oh, there's a couple meetups I can go to this week, that kind of thing. And right now I'm finding that this list is the best. There's been other lists that people have started that kind of have fizzled over time. This one seems pretty well maintained, and it is WordPress.org link. So that's a great place. The other thing, though, in terms of warning and why the meetups are a great place and the meetup groups that go with it, is if you do a search for WordPress tutorials, right, on YouTube, and it's like, oh, I want to go, you immediately have to be very careful as to what you're getting and what you're learning about. And you get some pretty interesting things. There are people like, I'll just say this guy, who gets a lot of attention. He ranks really high on topics. Doesn't always, he presents Elementor stuff. He presents accessibility stuff that I don't agree with, that type of thing. But he's very, very popular. So he comes to the top of the list. The problem for beginners is, the tip is kind of try to know what environment you're in. If they start talking about Elementor, that's a particular way of building a site that you may or not be interested in. And then if you start following that, you can get confused. If you get confused, again, probably the meetups end up being one of the best ways where you can ask that question and go, hey, he was talking about WP Bakery is the greatest way to build a website. And you're going to get people who are going to help you with that. Is that something that you should follow? So that's kind of one of my first sort of tips for the beginner, is to, where to find help. There are some Facebook groups too that are pretty helpful at different levels, but it's very, very easy. There's so many ways of using WordPress that you can start going down rabbit holes and get lost. I think we have plenty of folks on this call who have gone through that and kind of figured out how they filter out the noise and the things that don't apply to them. Like all of a sudden you're like learning all about a builder called Bricks, which many people love and swear by and think it's the best way to build sites, but it might not be the way that you're building sites. So you have to say, well, I need to kind of filter out that, or I want to learn more. And, now where do I start doing that? But that's kind of an ongoing tip that I have.
I like them. Yeah, and even the events.wordpress.org, like you said, I know a lot of people maybe have discovered this event. If you're within the local area, you see, events show up in your WordPress dashboard. But yeah, looking at this, I mean, again, if you can make the time, and it's really nice that a lot of these WordPress meetup groups, they're, if they're reasonable times, they really cover a wide range of topics. So yeah, definitely worth checking out. Do you want to grab it, Peter? We'll flip back and forth between.
Yeah, you're all set.
Yep. Give me a second here. Let me share my screen again. All right. So I kind of I made my little outline, no slides, but I'm going to try to go through as many of these as I can. So I'm going to start with some really simple ones and work my way through a little bit more complex examples. So this is kind of again, really simple one that if you're aware of it, then you're going to say, what's the big deal? But if you're not, you can hopefully say, wow, I never knew I could do that. So if you've ever needed to update multiple posts, and let's say you need to update, I think one of these sites has a decent number of blog posts. Yes, let me start with the simple one first, even before I get to that, because I actually dealt with a client site recently where I was talking to the client, and they're very frustrated by this kind of view. So this was their blog post. They had like 100 some odd blog posts, and I was just trying to talk them through something, and they were just getting really, really frustrated. They said, I can't see anything. I can't see this. I can't find this. And I just kind of had to tell them, very simple, very basic. If you're a beginner, many people don't know this, is like in this example here, a lot of these columns just don't make any sense from this view standpoint. So just a really simple thing. If your screen ever ends up being so squashed like this, I can't even read the post title here. Really, beginner's basic thing is turn off those columns that you don't care about. So in this particular case, again, it could be, these are just temporary. So maybe I don't care about seeing the SEO stuff for right now. That at least allows me to suddenly see the names of the titles of a blog post. You can always turn them on afterwards too. So that's just a really, really simple. And again, if you're not seeing enough here, changing little things like this, changing the number of items per page. If you have a long, say several hundred blog posts or pages, whatever, You can always adjust this too and apply this, and just you get more screen real estate. So really, really simple 1 minute thing to do. But again, if you're not aware of it, I think a lot of people just end up living with that squashed view and don't realize it. And another thing too is sometimes it's good to look back here and see things that are turned off. So if you're looking for something, saying, where is that? Maybe it was just, you had inadvertently turned it off at one point. So that's my real quick 1 second tip. Kind of a corollary to that in terms of updating. I had to do this recently for a site where we wanted to turn off comments on the site. And we did that at the site level, but there are all these old blog posts that were already on the site. And the thing is, there's plugins that let you do this, that let you turn all those comments off. But a really, really simple way to bulk edit posts, people may not be aware of this, is you can, in this example, I'm going to select all of these posts here. So there's like 6 items. So if you select this up here, this bulk actions piece, if I select edit here and then click the apply button, it's actually going to allow me at a multiple post level to update some fields and some of the it's kind of like doing a quick edit on one of these posts, some of the metadata. So for example, if I wanted to change, as I said, comments, I want to turn all of them to do not allow at the same time. Or let's say for some reason I want to change them all from being published to being draft. That's a real quick way rather than going into every single post. So let me just save that for a second. So these all should now switch to draft. Again, you could always switch it back afterwards too. So again, you want to first select everything. It's not the most intuitive just from a user interface standpoint. You have to hit apply to edit and then do your edit. If you think about this too, let's say you want to add, reassign things at bulk to categories. I know you can do it through the categories side as well too. But there's a real quick way to make changes at multiple level to multiple posts. I think it also works. I didn't try it here. I think it also works, yes, here as well too. So it applies to pages. I didn't try it for things like events, any other custom post types, but it would seem to make sense. It applies at that kind of level as well too. So real quick ones. That's my two 2-minute ones of something really simple from a view standpoint. Back to you, Peter.
All righty, let me grab that. Let me find the right window that I need to find. Boink. So what's kind of cool about this is we did not coordinate. That was on my list to show because I use it all the time. And again, you forget. And a lot of people don't know to go to site options. Or if you have plugins, they may add other categories. Like SEO plugins will add different things. Those are the things that
really like Yoast or whatever. It's like all the scores and all those things. That's what seems to take up a ton of space.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I have my next one is kind of interesting because, again, it may seem obvious, but I hear this all the time. Especially, it still carries over where people go, "Oh, I hate the block editor. I hate Gutenberg. Gutenberg is terrible." And then you want to try to find out, well, why do you think Gutenberg or the block editor or the way we edit sites, classic themes or block themes now, and I use classic themes, right? Classic themes are not full site editing, and I'm going to create one right here, but there's a number of different ways. People get lost in how to add content. And it could happen for different reasons. In fact, this was prompted by the meetup that Eagle runs, where somebody was there and they were just trying to start, and they didn't even know how to start writing the content, partly because there was a block that was already there. Not sure how it got there, but that was immediately confusing. Like it was a media, like a broken video block. I don't know exactly what it was. But here's the thing. There are a lot of ways to put content into a page. And it's gotten so much better. Years ago, it used to be like it was literally the editor where if you did something in Word and you wanted to paste it in, you had to go paste from Word, or you had to do some kind of backflips with it because all this kind of crazy code would go in it, and you don't have to do that anymore. And I have to make sure to pull up my notes on the right side of the screen so I can stay on track here. That's always a good idea. Okay, so So the first way is to, just start typing, just start typing, right? So um, may seem obvious, but yet at the same time, I've seen people go, okay, now I have to go up to the block inserter. Now I have to add another paragraph block and all. You don't. You just type as if you were, already typing. So that's pretty easy. That's pretty straightforward. But one of the other things that then gets into, okay, now you want to insert a block, that you would go into the block inserter, which was this plus sign up here, and then you could select a block if you want to do something different. But you don't have to do that right out of the gate. One of the first things that you can do, and I'm going to grab some content here that was not there, from there, that I had my friend ChatGPT create for me. But say I wanted, I've got some content here. Well, I went to ChatGPT. I'm going to cut and paste. Actually, let me copy the whole thing because I'll just show this as an example. I'm just going to copy this. This is ChatGPT, and we can spend some time on that. But if I came here and I just pasted that just like this, it's understanding the bullets, it's understanding the breaks and all. So I could do the same thing in Word. I can go into Word. I can go into, I'm actually using a tool now called LibreOffice, which is a free open source Word, not clone, it wouldn't be the right thing, but it works. I guess it is a clone.
Good. Yeah, it's all true.
Yeah. Yeah. But you could just you could write your content outside of WordPress and just post it in, which is great. But then here's the other thing that again people don't always necessarily think about, which is, let me go to the list view. Always important, and I'll show this. We'll go into preferences a little bit too. But say I grabbed all of these, got rid of that. I have that same content. I should, if I posted it as plain text, because it understood the markup, that's markup code. Let me change this for a second. Let me go. I'm just going to grab just some text. I'll just grab this copy here. Copy all of this. Now I'm just going to paste it as plain text. So I'm not putting any formatting here. This is another way. Let me get rid of. I copied everything, so I got all. But one thing, you could just go in freeform enter, and then after you put that content in, then you can transform it to a heading if you wanted something to be a heading. Again, a paragraph. You could grab, if you had something that was sort of list items, and now you want to make that a list. You can transform it. See this box above the editor, or if you've got your toolbar up here, this allows you to transform just straight content into something else, and you can go back and forth depending on. And this transform to will always give you the options that are available, which wouldn't be everything, right? So if this was an image, I couldn't transform an image to a quote, for example. But in this particular case, I'm just using text, and I actually put those bullet points inside now a quote thing. But the idea here is that instead of getting hung up with, now I've got to enter the next thing and format it, now I've got to enter the next thing, you can enter all. I do this all. This is the main way I enter content, right? So I'll enter it, and then I'll set my headings, and then I might do some interesting formatting. These came over as not. Did they come over separate? Yeah, they did. If I took this and then transformed it into, would I be so bold as to do column? I'll put it into one column. But the bottom line is, there's so many ways, and the easiest ways to work the content where you're familiar, what you know how to use, and then you can come in here and just paste it so you come in Word. But there's one other thing that I consider this a trick for people who are still loving it would help if I didn't keep hitting the caps lock instead of if there's like, I like the old way of just writing content. Well, you can insert, or I'll do the slash, and you can insert a classic block. And if you're inserting the classic block, now you can start typing content however you like. And then you can say, I'm going to put a list here, a list, and I'm going to take that, and I'm going to use my classic block. Little choices here. I'm going to put in. I think I could put in, add media. I'm going to put in this image here, all in the classic block, kind of like the old way of doing things. If that's how you're comfortable working, you can still do that in WordPress using the classic block. You can use that as you wish, or now maybe you want to do more formatting. Now that classic block, you can now convert it into separate blocks. And now it has gone and said, okay, here's your paragraph block, here's your list block, here's your image block. So again, the idea being is if you're transitioning, if you will, from the classic editor, you can do everything in the classic block. Get all your content in there in the writing way that you like, and then convert them all to separate blocks, and then you can take advantage of all the formatting capabilities that you have, putting things into rows and columns, and all of the improvements that have come with the block editor. So that's my tip.
Yeah.
What's that?
I think it's a great tip because a lot of times people get too hung up on the formatting and it breaks their flow, especially if you're writing a blog post or something. And if you're doing a page, it might be a little bit different. But if you're a blogger, I can see, to your point, Peter, it's like you get tripped up by the formatting. But again, I would say the same thing could be true in Word. If somebody's using Word and they're like, oh, wait a minute, I need to, how is this a headline or whatever? It's like, don't worry about that stuff. Go write your text first, then go back and do the formatting. But yeah, it's a great tip, especially the classic editor piece.
Yeah, I think again, I hear podcasters who've been doing this talking about it takes me forever to write 3 paragraphs. I'm like, why? I want to see what you're doing. I want to see the painful steps that you're unnecessarily going through. And then if you are somebody who uses Chat GPT, and there's stuff a lot that's free, when I prompt something in Chat GPT, like I will say, well, I had gone through a couple of iterations, which you can always do. But my prompt will be, give me some content, not the final content, maybe something, but then I will specifically say, properly formatted for a good blog post, using headings properly, bullet points were needed, that type of thing. And then it outputs all that content. I can copy it, paste it right in, and then start editing it from there within the block editor. So that was that one. If there's any questions on that?
Okay. If anyone has questions as we're going through, feel free to unmute yourself or throw it into the chat. But no, that's a good one. I think you're right. It's sort of like the barrier. I get it, especially if someone's coming from the old editor. But that's a good way to, as you said, kind of ease your way into it. It's like use that to begin with, and then get used to the block structures afterwards. All right, so we're still on the easy ones for now, which is great. So I'm going to go over a couple more. I'm jumping to menus. I got a couple things here around menus. So starting with a real simple one, but kind of goes back to things that should be built into WordPress but are not. Shockingly, these days, one is just the ability to duplicate things easily. As you can see right now, I have a plugin installed already for duplicating pages and posts. It's this duplicate page post plugin. Extremely useful. I tend to use it on almost every site because it does something very simple. It works for pages, posts, custom post types, etc. The one thing, so again, just the idea behind this is any post or page, you suddenly get this little thing in here. If I duplicate it, it's going to create a draft version of that. And then I can start modifying it to do whatever I want. So, but the one thing this does not do, the duplicate page or post, is it does not duplicate menus. So when would you need to duplicate a menu? Well, quite often, let's say you want to have a different kind of menu for your mobile than desktop, for example. So maybe you want to have some different options in there or whatever, or a footer menu. Let's say you want a footer menu and then you want header menu, etc. So right now, there is no easy way to duplicate Within WordPress core, no easy way to duplicate a menu. Well, that's where, again, there's always a plugin for that. So the duplicate menu plugin, it's kind of, I'm a little bit surprised this actually hasn't been updated in a year. And typically, you know, our general rule of thumb is to try to stick with plugins that have been, you know, updated most recently, but I still use this one and it still works. So don't, again, there's always a little bit of gray area here. Even though it hasn't been updated in a year, it still does work. So let me install this plugin, just kind of show you. It's very simple, but if you ever have this use case, it's good to know that you don't have to recreate a whole menu from scratch. So did I install it already? Let me see. No, I didn't. So let me add it first. So it's called, as the name implies, duplicates menu. And if anyone knows of a newer one or one that's updated more, this is just the one I've always kind of used. So it's just been the simplest one. So really simple, install it, activate it. What does it do? If I go now to my menus, here under my primary menu, oops, let me refresh, activate it. Hold on, save my menu. Well, maybe it stopped working. It normally does work. Hold on. Tools. Normally under menus. Am I missing? Normally there's a duplicate menu option under here. Create a menu. Well, I'll be
Wish I
darned.
could, but it's been a while since I've used this.
I swear I just used this prior to 6.8. Well, maybe it's just been broken now. Okay, never mind. Well, we still need a better plugin for duplicating menus. Hold
Very
that
good.
thought.
Yeah.
Hold
Well,
that
hey,
thought. Because we're really screwed. We don't have a duplicate menu thing. So hold on.
so the tip here is things change.
Yeah, things change. All right. Caveat
It,
emptor
it's
then.
on the left under menus.
It's on the left under menu. Oh, here we
Oh, there
go.
you go.
Eagle. I thought it put something under. Oh, here we go. Thank you so much.
It's been so long since I used.
I know. This is the lack of practice on it. So duplicate menu. There we go. So
We're all here.
now if I
Yeah.
go back to menus, Eagle saves the day. Thank you, sir. So underneath here, now we have our duplicated menu. And remember, this always kind of throws me off too, that when you switch menus, you always have to make sure you select it. So now in this case, I really can say that maybe I don't want, I don't know, let's remove a couple things here. I'll remove this, I'll remove the contact us, for example, and then save that. So now I can have two separate menus, but I just don't have to start from scratch. In this case, I mean, this is kind of a silly example because it's not, there really aren't a lot of menu items. But imagine, you know, imagine a case where you have a really large menu structure. That's definitely where I used this plugin before. It was much simpler to do that. So, all right, good to know. Duplicate menu still works. Two other real quick ones. These are, again, kind of no-brainers, but I always say that, but again, if somebody's never seen it before, you may not be aware of this. So let's say on this site, for example, let's say I'm still building out this site, and let's say I'm going to add, I don't have an About Us page. I haven't built it yet, but I just want to make sure I account for it so I don't forget about it. So what can you do if you want to put like a placeholder? This is really more for putting a placeholder in here for a menu. So I don't have a page in here. What you can do is create a custom link. So I'm going to call this link my About Us. But the problem is I don't have a URL for it. There's no page to link to. But you know, one of the tricks is you can just put in a hashtag in here and add that to the menu. So in this case now I have a custom link. It doesn't link to anything. So if I go back to this, then I can see, okay, I have About Us. If I click on it, it doesn't go anywhere. This also, there's kind of a corollary to this too, is let's say I want to start building out a little bit of either child, you know, sub menus to this. So let's say under About Us, I do want to put things like, I do have a couple pages I've already built, like maybe the, I don't know, the cat archive. This is our test, my test site, I should say. So I'm going to add these 3 pages. I'm going to put them underneath the About Us, that custom link. All right, so now I do have some content under here. I'll save this again. But now let's say, okay, so it's great. So now I have a sub menu, but I don't want this menu. I don't want people to click on this because it's just going to keep bringing them to that hashtag. So again, really, really simple tip. All you need to do is go back to the About Us custom link. It's kind of weird. It forces you to put in a URL to begin with. But now if I remove that and save my menu again. Oh, sorry, go back, custom link again. Hashtag. Oh, I should have removed I removed, I hit the remove instead of removing the link. Sorry about that. Instead of save. So let's say again, I had these two underneath it, cat archive and last. What I can do here is I can get rid of that and then save my menu. So that'll still be apparent, but it won't be clickable anymore. So let me go back to this. So as you can see, I have the cat archive and the last pattern. This thing is just pointing to nothing underneath it now. So there's no more hashtag underneath there. So that's just the way, again, if you have a parent menu item and you have children underneath it, but you don't want anyone to be able to click on that top part, that's a way to do it. You kind of create a blank, it's really a blank custom link with nothing underneath it. So that's my menus. Did I have anything else under menus? Let me just check real quick. Nope, those are my menu things. So
Yeah,
back.
I'm not an accessibility expert, but there are conflicting discussions about whether or not you should or shouldn't do that, because whether or not the screen reader can actually find that about if it doesn't have a link on it. So
True. Yeah,
uh,
I will caveat with this with yes,
yeah.
some of
So
these probably do have gray areas. So yes.
Yeah, I think it would be better if it was a button for accessibility.
If
Is that
the I think he's saying the about us thing because it's not a non-clickable. I still think it would show up in the nav for a screen reader, but it just wouldn't have an href link to it is how I think that would look. But yeah, that's a good question of in terms of accessibility. That might not be the best solution for it. So I'll table that. I'll put that as a note.
I use the hashtag trick to build out a menu before I've built all the other content, just so that I can, and then I go back and modify things in the menu from there. But yeah, that's where you get kind of that dead menu. On the grab?
Yep, back to you, Peter. Sorry. Yep.
All right. Any other questions before or anything?
Not yet.
Okay. So let me share and decide which way I want to go. Still kind of on the editing screen. I did want to show a couple of things in terms of the what text is, and this is or what's on the page. And I think to kind of demystify something. Say you created a bunch of stuff, and then you wanted to copy it. You could actually just go over to like a notepad. Oops. Well, that's interesting. Because normally what happens when you copy it, it copies the underlying code. This time it didn't. I wonder it was different. But I'll show this from a different perspective, which is often forgotten are these three little dots on the top right of your editing screen. All right. And those, when you click on that, that's where you get into preferences on how your interface works. Like, do you want to go distraction free? Do you want to put the toolbar at the top up here versus down on a per block? And I'm curious what people like. And I have problems kind of going up there, but at the same time, a lot of people have problems with this. This is kind of in the way, your options here. Distraction free, full screen mode, variations on, hey, I'm just going to write. But then, there's other things in here, and this is where I was. If I copy all blocks, of all things, now I should be able to go back to here, and if I paste those, you're seeing all of the code. Blocks are really just a certain kind of markup that works. So what's kind of neat about copying the code is you could literally, you could save things as patterns and all. And we can show that a little bit. But if you just wanted a quick thing, you could literally just copy it over into like Notepad and have that code and then paste it back in, and it'll paste in, and WordPress will go, oh, okay, this is what you want editing, and here's your list and things like that. So that's kind of neat that's even over here in the three dots editing section. You could see what your keyboard section are all. But one of my favorite ones to do here is always open list view, right? So that turning that on so that whenever I open a post or page, I'm going to see this list view over on the left automatically versus having to go up here and click the list view. it's a small thing, but this is where we get into all these little tweaks into what your interface is, you know. I don't want to see the discussion things, and maybe I don't use tags a whole lot. So if I turn these on, I'm kind of cleaning up what my interface and what my preferences are. So what should happen is if I now go over to go back, and this is the another thing that new users kind of might get lost, and they're in you know, this turning on the options panel, which is this little icon here. And then in my case, I've got Cadence running, and Cadence has its own little sidebars depending on what I'm doing, right? But this is what we're most used to seeing, that side option when you're looking at blocks. But this is also next to the block, you go that tab here for the post. That gives you, you know, what my date, the post is, you know, all those options. But in my preferences, I turned off tags and comments, so now I just don't see those in my menu. So it's a way of cleaning up things. So Ray, if you don't mind, I'm going to keep going on the topic of cleaning stuff up. All right, so there's a lot of plugins that you can use to clean up your working environment. The one that I've come to use is the see, this is an exact example where I'm like, okay, where's plugins is there, right? Is the plugin that I think many people, I feel like we almost introduced it here. Because I think when we first started talking about admin and site enhancements, it was installed like 10 times. And then Sue, I think, shared it with Solid WP, Nathan, who then shared it, and then it just kind of picked up steam. But what's great about the admin and site enhancements plugin is you've got so many things that you can turn on and off. And one of the first things that's really good is ways for cleaning up and making your interfaces more simple. And I'll show you a couple of ways that I use to do it. I've also gone into ChatGPT and built my own plugins to do things like give me a slim down menu choice and all. But you know what? If you've got admin and site enhancements, is right now it's inactive. I'm going to activate it. I'll show you a couple of the things that make for some kind of a really neat way of doing things. Actually, something is already scam likely. I have something activated, and you kind of got a preview there, which is trimming down your menu based on what you're showing and not showing. So let me, I'm going to go to, when you install this plugin and activate it, under tools, you now have a new link called enhancements. And there's a couple of neat things that you can do here. This is the free version. I don't have the pro version involved, but one of the things that I really like, it's right now, it's activated, and I want to go to the admin interface, and I'm going to take off the, I'll turn this back on because I'm going to show you the menu organizer and some of the other options. I'll turn this off, and I'll turn off enhance list. So right now, the only thing I think I have on is view admin as role. I'm going to save changes here. So this simple thing is great for both admins who have other users on, or even this simple thing of kind of cleaning up. If you're in just, all I'm doing is editing and you've got all these menu choices, if you activate that where you now can change what role you're on, and it is a little thing that says, hey, if something happens, you get stuck, use this link and it'll reset it. So it's always kind of a good idea to just grab that, copy it somewhere, and I'll just do that. But I've never had a problem with this. But what I can do now is I can say, I can just go view as editor, author, contributor. It's not a role, it's not a user switcher. I'm not switching to another person. There are tools for that, but it allows me to view as that role, that level of person. So if I just wanted to go to an author level, now I'm just in that mode, what an author would see, which is post, media. I can even turn off comments, and I'll show you that in a second. And not even pages in this case, because that role of author does not have the control to edit pages. But maybe in this particular case, you say, okay, I actually want to be, I'm going to switch back to administrator. But this neat little thing now, if I were to go to editor, again, I'm not getting all the admin choices, but I'm getting what an editor would see. So now I can see posts, media, and pages, which are kind of when I'm kind of building something out, and I'm not getting all of the extra stuff. There's a few more things that are there and reasons for, but I'm not getting all of that extra links that I don't need to see. So it's a way of cleaning up the interface. But I'll show you another way to do it using the same plugin. So now if I go under tools and I am back to, I'm back to me. So I'm viewing, I went back to administrator. And if I go to enhancements, under admin interface, one thing I can do is I can clean up the admin bar, right? So I click this, and what are the things that you can turn on and off, showing the WordPress logo. I'm going to remove the logo, remove updates, just all of the stuff that's up here. Some of the stuff is from things that I've created, but I'm, that's removing the howdy. That should go away when I save this. But another thing that is kind of nice is the admin menu organizer. No, that's not the one. That's order. I don't want to hide admin bar in this one. Dashboard widgets. Oh, maybe it is that one. Let me save this and see. All right, where's the choice? I'm doing what you're doing, right? So which is,
it says it's under settings, whatever you're looking for.
I'm looking for where I can show all or show less, those choices there.
Under settings.
Under settings. That's so weird. Now I'm in the same exact situation because I've admin organizer, but then, once you enabled, you can find the admin menu under. Oh, I see what you're
linked saying. In the admin interface.
Yeah. My mistake, because a lot of their things do this. I was looking for that. This is the one where you actually have to go to the admin menu, right? Right, and then, okay. Sorry about that, everybody. It's like you get so used to a certain interface, and then once you do it, you don't think about it anymore. But what you can decide to do is say, all right, there's going to be a show more, show less, and you can decide what you want to, hide until toggle. Maybe I want to hide everything in this case, except for posts, media, and pages. This is another way of doing this. And so if I save these changes, and I should be able to go to my dashboard, and now it's hidden all of those things. And now I can just expand it. It's another way, again, these ways of cleaning up the interface for you. So when you just want to be sort of in editing mode without maybe doing a switcher, or I had created, this is a little thing that I created. I can show you the snippet where it literally goes back and forth between a trim down menu of just, pages, posts, and media. And we can go through a few more things with that, that advanced settings plugin, because it gets into really deep things like duplicating a post. You don't need a plugin for it. You check a box that says I want to turn that tool on, and so on and so forth. So anyway, cleaning up your things, getting the junk out of the way. That's one way to do it, where you can go in, trim down your menus, and or just view it as a different kind of user. There you go.
Sue mentioned it's especially useful on WooCommerce sites. Yeah, we have Yeah, disable.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. I know I haven't tried it yet. I think I installed it once on a test site and just didn't have time to play with it. But yeah, it's a Swiss Army knife plugin. Looks interesting. And he said he's still actively updating it too, or see
Oh, all
adding
the time.
features. Yeah.
And there's
That's
a
fun.
pro
Yeah.
version. He's got a lifetime deal on it. And
Hmm.
before I'm going to check my notes, somebody else has come out with something similar, but it has different. It's not completely different. There's some overlap, and I want to compare them because it's another one where, again, it's basically take 20 plugins and put it into one plugin where you're just turning things on and off and say, yeah, I want duplicate posts, or this user option is kind of a neat one that's built in, and there's a whole bunch more. We can spend some more time if we have time and people want to see.
Cool. All right, I'm gonna jump into geekier waters now because again, it's just as I said, I was just writing notes of things I've been working on the past week, and this is another one that I was like, I don't think we've actually mentioned it as a topic before, but it's kind of a handy reminder for folks, and that's just well, let me share my screen. And that's about having multiple ways to access your website if there's problems. So again, if you've maintained more than one site or maybe just your own site, at some point you've probably had an issue where you need to get access and your site's either unstable or unavailable. And what do? You can call your hosting company, et cetera, et cetera. But it's really nice to always have, let's say, a backdoor or a second way to get access to your website. So one way to access the files on your site is installing a plugin like, WP File Manager. I know there's some debate I've often heard about, whether this kind of a plugin poses potential security risks by keeping it on, but I found it handy at times, at least for my demo sites. If I want to quickly look at something on my site, quickly look at the file system. But the problem is with this kind of plugin, if your whole site is down, you can't get access to it that way. So you can sometimes view your site also through your hosting company. So for example, I'm using SiteGround for some of my sites. So SiteGround does have a file manager here as well. So it varies depending on your hosting company, how good that file manager is that they provide for you. So I always try to at least set up an FTP account or FTP access to all my sites, at least my client sites and my personal sites too. So if you're not familiar with FTP, it can seem a little bit intimidating, but if you're familiar enough with using like, on Windows, a file explorer or something like that, it's a very, very similar experience. So there's a lot of different FTP tools out there. Probably one of the most common ones, and at least one of my favorites, is FileZilla. So FileZilla, you can download the client. It's free. Go to FileZilla, project.org. It works on multiple platforms. I'm on Mac, but it works on Windows as well too. So that's kind of the first piece. Just install that, just set it up. There's basic instructions. There's plenty of YouTube channels on how to do that. It's fairly straightforward, just setting up and installing FileZilla. And then the next piece will be, if you want access to your site, you're going to need the credentials. So on SiteGround, for example, and again, your hosting will vary, but if you go to your hosting dashboard someplace, you should have a place where you can add an FTP account. So I won't show you mine here, but you want to create an FTP account, and that will give you all the credentials. In fact, some of them, if they're nice, will give you ones where you can download the FTP credentials for FileZilla. They'll give it to you as like a XML file or something. You can just import that into FileZilla. So, or other types of FTP tools. And you want to test that out. Again, do all this before you need it. That's the big thing. That's like backups and restores. Do it before you really need it. So once you have that in place, so what you're going to need to do is on FileZilla, I'm going to access one of my demo sites here. What you'll do is you can do a quick entry, which means you'll just put in, when you create an FTP account, it'll give you the host name, the username, password, et cetera, et cetera. You can do a quick connect. Or if you're going to be accessing a site multiple times, you can actually just add it to this like site manager tool. So I'm going to connect to my demo site because I'm going to show you a couple things. So when you first connect to the site, I have multiple subdomains here, so most likely you would just see one main domain. But I'm looking at this test site. So let's look at the main demo site. So if you've never really looked at the files behind your site, most sites are kind of set up the same way. You'll have the public HTML, So that's really, think of that as almost like your root folder. That's where everything goes, including your WordPress installation. So again, the way that FileZilla works, if you've never used it before, is the right side here is basically the server that you're pointing to. And the left side is just your computer. So you can navigate to wherever you like on your computer. And again, if you look at this, it's just showing you, here's the files, the file types, etc. I'm going to move my window a little bit so I can see more of my screen. Permissions, etc., etc. So again, the nice thing about this is if you have problems, you can start accessing your website even if WordPress is down. So let's go some examples. Let's crash this site. So that's again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort it by modified. So one thing that probably a very typical scenario is, and this isn't really crash, but let's say that you're updating a bunch of plugins. So this site happens to be a good one. It has 4 updates that need to happen. And I'm just going to go crazy. I'm just going to update them all. So when you run an update through WordPress, what happens over here on the back end, is I'm going to refresh this real quick, is there's this .maintenance file that gets added by WordPress. And what that is if you look at that file itself, I have it open here. I have a version of it open here. It's basically a PHP file that grabs the current time and it puts your site into this maintenance mode. Like if I had looked at it, these plugin updates probably ran so quickly. If I looked at it though, while these updates are happening, or if an update breaks, it would say site inaccessible or please come back, that kind of thing. So your site may be stuck during maintenance mode. And as I said, normally what WordPress will do is after a certain period of time, I think by default it's minutes. I don't know the exact number. If this file is still sitting out here, as you'll see, if everything's been successful, I'll refresh my directory, that file is gone. WordPress deletes it. But I can force it. So here's the one I looked at. I can force it into maintenance mode. So there, I just uploaded it. Now if I go back to that site, here's my demo site, and let's say I'm going to go in. I think the front end should look fine. Oh, there we go. Briefly scheduled for maintenance. Check back in a minute. So if it's stuck like this because a plugin has failed, one thing, again, you can either wait and hope that WordPress will delete that .maintenance file, which it should. Over time, it's supposed to keep polling that directory and see whether or not the update's complete or if that file's been sitting there for a while. But again, by having FTP access, if you need to, let's say you're in a panic and you're trying to do something, you can sign on and just delete that maintenance file. So if I go back up here and delete it, say yes. Now I go back to my website, and voila, it's back. So that's just a real handy thing of if your site is stuck, it's stuck in maintenance. Again, look for that .maintenance file is a little tricky too. That by default you should be able to see it, but it's a special file type. All these files that have a dot in front of them are system files. So there may be a setting you need to turn on to make sure that you can view system files. Otherwise, it may not be visible to you. So that's one quick thing to show. But let's look at something a little bit more in depth. So I'm going to break something on, let's see which site. I had one of these sites in mind to break something. So I'm going to break a plugin, and that should really actually crash my site, which would give me an opportunity to show 2 different things. Maybe it's this one. So I got so many demo sites. It's demo 2, I think. I think this is a plugin I can break. This has the dummy content generator plugin. So let's go to this site. This is again, if you're looking at plugins, so under again, if you've never looked on a server before, so under public HTML, WP content is where you'll find all your themes, including ones you don't use, and all your plugins are here as well too. So we're going to look at that WP content dummy content generator. It's a really simple plugin. This is a plugin that most people probably don't keep on a site, but it just creates dummy posts and pages. Really good for testing kind of thing. But let's say that we ran an update in this let's say this plugin broke our site. So let's break the plugin first. So I'm gonna, just to be safe, I'm gonna download a copy of it first, because then it'd be easy to fix. And then actually I'm gonna break it this way. So let me I'll edit this page 1 second here. There is, I'm going to create a duplicate of this, just so I have a backup of it in case something goes really wrong. So I'm going to open this up. Again, you don't have to worry too much about this. This is just Visual Studio Editor. You can open this up in TextPad like Peter had. And I'm going to, what should I do? I'll just put something in here. I will break this plugin. So if you look at it, this plugin is PHP. So what I just did obviously is not valid PHP, right? I just stuck some random garbage in the middle of this PHP file. So now I'm going to upload that. If I go back to FileZilla, I'm going to upload this modified PHP and I'm going to overlay this guy. So do I want to override it? Yes, go ahead. So now if all goes well, which means all goes wrong, hey, I broke the site. So something's wrong. So that's good. I broke it. So there's a couple of things you can do at this point. So I'll talk about, again, this is where FTP access is really important. One of the first things you want to do, if you did see something like this, in general, you probably would get an email sent to you, which allows you to then access the site in safe mode. But again, it depends if you're not the admin, maybe you don't get the email, et cetera, et cetera. There could be reasons why you may not be able to access it directly through that safe mode. But what you can do is, again, if I was looking at this, if somebody called me and said, hey, my site's down like that, one of the first things I would probably do is look at the logs. So let me see. If I refresh, there we go. So the PHP error log, that's one of the most important places to look to begin with. Again, it may not always be there, but you kind of want to start, analyzing a problem like this. So I'm going to download this PHP error log, and let me download it. It's going to, again, remember the way this works, it's downloading off to this directory on the left. So now I have this PHP error log on my file system. So I'm going to look at that in a second. And I'm going to bring that once again into this Visual Studio Editor. So there's my PHP error log. Let's just drop it in here. So what I should see in here is some, and here's the thing too, when you first look at, if you've never looked at this, one of these logs before, you might be a little bit scared and say, oh my God, this is what's going on here. Well, some of this stuff is old. A lot of these things, it's just a log that accumulates over time. So you always want to go to the bottom to really see what's going on. And well, here we go. Sure enough, it's a PHP parser error. It's saying, I will. That seems strange. So it gives me an idea of where to start. And in the PHP error logs, it even tells me, as I said, here's the plugin. It's this plugin. It's within this. Oh, actually, I guess I broke the speculation rules. Oh, it's within the dummy content plugin. So there we go. So it's this error, this line. So if I wanted to, if you're, you got to look at the line, at least it gives you an idea of where to look to begin with. So I know that the WP content generator plugin is having an issue. So now what can I do? Well, one thing I could quickly do, again, because I have FTP access, is I can turn off that plugin. Even though I can't access my site, I can still turn off that plugin. Well, how can I do that? Well, one simple way is I can just rename this directory. I can call this bad WP content generator. Right. Here we go. So now if I go back to my site and I refresh, there we go. So I can get back into it at least and start that process of debugging. And you can see it's been deactivated now due to an error. Because what happens is when you have a plugin, it first registers itself kind of with WordPress. By renaming that directory, I basically hid it, if you will, temporarily from WordPress. That allows me now to go through some kind of a debugging process to figure out what's going on. So again, this was a little bit of a long one, but it all starts with make sure you get FTP access, to your sites. Have that. It's really important from a troubleshooting standpoint. And again, a couple of things you can do. One thing is always look at the PHP error log. You can also, if your site is up and running but still having some kind of problems, there are other plugins that you can have to look at WordPress errors. In particular, what's the one I use? It's this error log monitor plugin. That'll display them for you kind of on the admin side of things. So if it's more of a WordPress error, but it's not crashing your site, this is kind of a good plugin for monitoring that. So I'll shut up there because I've been talking for a while. So again, good tool to have, a little bit more in depth, but again, don't be afraid. Any questions come up on that? No.
Let
It's easy prosecuted, of course. Yes, of course.
All on you on that one. Let's see. Yeah.
Back to you, Peter, then.
Okay.
And
On the lighter
I'll
side.
fix that plugin while we're doing.
Yeah. All right. Ready? Yeah, I'll do a couple of plugins here that are kind of interesting, or simple, but those little things that I like. There are one of the things I like is when I find plugins that are from the same development team that I like, and they work well together, but they work well as their own. Often in they come from a good team. There'll be a premium version, that type of thing. So there's a couple that I like. One is a group called Publish Press, which I think puts out some outstanding tools. They have free versions of the repository that when you go through them, and they're really dedicated, because now they have a YouTube channel that they put out a lot of content done as a podcast and all. But they have some really good plugins that I like, even stuff that you didn't think you would need, like, a checklist, which we turn checklists off often. That says, oh, did you do these things? But in certain environments, like I've got clients that I want to create a custom checklist for them for something like that. So the Publish Press checklist is great. Editorial calendar, you can set something up in the back end that says you're going to plan for stuff. When you go through each one of these, they're really good quality tools. Another one that does, I haven't searched for it, they've got a couple things, is Meow. I'm going to show you something. Meow apps. Let's see if it comes up in the search. So Meow Gallery, it's from Jordy Meow, and there's got a number of different things with his cartoony images. So he's got a number of good plugins, but I'm going to show you one. I've tried a number of different light boxes. I like light boxes for certain applications, and they've got one that I really like called Meow Lightbox. And what I like about Meow Lightbox, and I'll show you just a simple post that has just images on here. I've just placed a few images. This is a gallery. I've done nothing to them. There's no, if I click on them, nothing happens. But if I install the Meow Lightbox and activate it, let's let my slow server go, and just have to remember if he has. So he does have. I say he. There's a whole settings thing. There is a premium version. They're saying galleries, but the Lightbox, you can turn things on and off. Like, do we want to have the title and the captions, things like that? But when it's active, which I think it automatically is, and if I go back to this page and refresh it, now if I click on it, I get a Lightbox. What's nice about this is if you're retrofitting this to a site, for example, where maybe you have a number, and I like the Lightbox, and I would edit like the titles and make sure that it has captions so that you really do explain what these things are. But what's nice about this is if you've got, in my case with this site, I've got sample content. I'm going to try to remember one that has, like, this one has the featured image, and it has this other image down here. There wasn't a link here until, and a lot of them, they make you, okay, you're going to link to the file, you're going to do, this one allows you to just kind of turn it on and have it work, so that when you have, images, it doesn't look at the featured image, which makes sense. But what's nice is if I had multiple images on here, and I was using this example with, in my mind, I was looking at the Gardening with a Madman website, which is somebody who visits our meetup a lot, but they'll have 5, 6 images on a long post, which are great. But what if you just kind of wanted to, let me look at the images? And this Lightbox allows you to, as I showed with the, if like this has 2 images. So it allowed me to just show those 2 images in the Lightbox. So I could just see the images. I like that. For me, I like that because a lot of times, like if I'm looking at a post that is chock full of images and I want to see them kind of larger and all, and it's so easy to install. There's a lot of Lightbox plugins, but this one was one that I gravitated to partly because of how easy it is, how flexible it is, how much control you have over things. And yeah, there's a premium version that they've
It's
got.
kind of neat because, sorry to interrupt you. That's kind of neat because it almost creates like a pseudo gallery for you. You're right. Like it's like use like foo. I think it's like the foo light one box or something. Now it works different. Like you have to create the gallery outside of your page of post, and then you have to insert it as a short code or whatever into your post. But that's kind of neat. It uses existing images and sort of creates, like I said, sort of a pseudo gallery for you with a Lightbox. That's cool.
And not to take away the fact that Core has now added a Lightbox feature in, but you have to go through some steps. And this was like, you know what? If you've just built out a site that is chock full of images and all, and now you're like, boy, I'd really like to. This kind of works just by turning it on, which, you know, every once in a while, that's a great way to go. Let me see if I had anything else that I wanted to show with this one. I'll show another one that while we're looking at plugins, that's kind of a neat little thing. There's a couple. So one of them is a plugin, and I'll put the links in, called Plugin Site. I'm going to activate that, and there's another one that you see. So Plugin Site, what it'll do for us. My slow server. It gives a new thing in the column like that shows you the plugins that you have, just kind of in one view, what version you're at, when it was last updated, what it's tested up to, and then kind of a flag that shows you whether it's like, oh, you might want to look into this one. It's hasn't been updated since a year. I tested up to 6.55. So that's a neat little thing. And another thing that I've already got activated that you can see here is, it's another notes one called Plugin Notes Plus. Now this one is kind of handy because when you're developing, when you're creating something in the first place, because you can put notes in. This is a lousy note to put, but you can attach notes to a plugin, and you can attach you can add notes to that. But this is good that when you are trying, maybe you tried 3 Lightboxes, and you're testing them, and you want to put a note to side what the pros and cons or something to keep track of, but just doing it within the same environment that you're working. So it's kind of a neat little plugin that all it does is say, hey, I installed a plugin to do something. I just want to keep a note. You could do it on Notepad. Obviously, you could put it in a file, but having it right there where you're saying, why is this active again? What am I doing with this? This plugin allows you to put a note next to your plugins. Want me to keep going?
No, let's flip it back to me. We'll flip back and forth. I have a couple of shorter ones too. So yeah, it's funny. Some of these things I love them too. They're kind of the features that, part of me is like, why does a WordPress do that? Why is that not built in? But I get it too. It's like, otherwise WordPress itself would become extremely bloated if all these little features are in there. So it gives plugin developers a chance to enhance and extend WordPress. So I'm going to stick on the geeky path. Peter's doing all the fun ones, but this is, again, stuff good to know when you need it. So this is a weird one I had to research not too long ago about options. So for people who aren't aware, when you install WordPress behind the scenes, WordPress is really, there's a lot of, WordPress is a collection of files and also databases. So the databases are in, MySQL on a server someplace. Generally, you don't interact directly with the databases, but one of the databases that's kind of important is the WP options database. So this options database really stores a ton of options and settings, I should say, around your website. So for example, all the settings that you would see in your admin screen around like your reading settings, permalinks, widgets, et cetera, et cetera. So all of these things. So for example, all of these settings are stored in this table. They're stored in that options table. And normally, if you want, the one way you can view them, again, going back to the geeky side of things, is if you have access to the database. So again, I'm on SiteGround, and under SiteGround, I can actually access my tables, for my website. So this is something I'm very familiar with and comfortable with. Obviously, a lot of people probably are not. I can go into here, and this doesn't scare me. So under my PHP, what's that site? I was like, so this is demo 2. In here, there's this options table. So all of these values I looked at. Again, this is the stuff I saw on the front end of my site. So, for example, the site address, the tagline, site title, all these things are stored in this table. So what I could do is I could edit these things directly here, if I'm comfortable doing that. I think a lot of people are not comfortable doing that. So what's one way that you can access and see all of those options as well is on your site. Again, if you're an admin, you can go to, I believe it's just, so it would be your website name /wp-admin/options.php. And that brings up this page. Again, sort of one of these like hidden pages a lot of people aren't familiar with, but this page basically shows you all of those, because the options table is just key value pairs. So it shows you the key and then the current value in it. And what's neat in here is this is a great way to scroll through them all. Again, if you're not familiar with databases, something, again, you don't want to touch. And the cool thing is you can also, again, there's a warning up there. Be cautious. You can really break your site this way. But the other neat thing too is that you can also see a lot of plugins store their settings and options in there too. Some of them you obviously can't see, but let's say you're trying to debug something, like, wait a minute, why is this? What's happening here? What is this value, et cetera. So again, if you type in your website name / if you're an admin /wp-admin/options.php, that lets you see all of them and modify them all from just a page instead of having to understand database or SQL or queries or whatever. So that's the first part of this tip is just the fact that giving visibility to that. I'll show you a use case for that, which is, where is it? Underneath the general settings, because this is why actually I had to dig into this a little bit recently. If you've ever worked on a site that, let's say, maybe you didn't create, or maybe you created one, I don't know, or somebody else created it, now they've handed off to you. Let's say that you want to change the admin email address because that person is no longer there, or they're not supporting the site or whatever. So you want to change it to yourself. If you go through the normal general settings thing, I'll just change this to one of my old, let's say I'm going to change it to one of my old emails. So if you just type the change in here, one of the problems is it'll change it, but it says, okay, it's pending. So basically the other person has to go and approve it. Until that happens, it's not actually going to be changed. But what if that person doesn't check their email, they're gone, et cetera, et cetera. So, but I do want to change this. So now all these admin, because again, the admin email is often the default for a lot of things on the site. Security, if you have security software, things like that. So let's say you want it coming to yourself, but you don't want to wait for this person to respond. Well, again, this is one of the settings that's inside of that options table. So if I look in the options, which is right here, and if I look for admin, I can either scroll down to it or I can be lazy. I'll find you. So here's the admin email. So at this point, I can actually I can change it to, I'll change it to my Gmail. And if I save this, the save button's way down here. Save it. Now it's saved. So now if I go back to my general settings, I'm gonna make sure I'm on the right side. I have too many sites in here. If I refresh it, there we go. So it switched it. So even though it says now it's saying, oh, it's pending change, it is changed on the database in the back end. So that's a quick way to, again, modify settings, all those other settings that are available here. Again, most times you want to go change them through the regular screens, but if there's a time that there's something that you're not sure of, it's a good way to kind of look in and double check settings. So options, the options page, kind of the hidden options page. That's my tip. Back to you, Peter.
All righty. Here's the website.
Yeah. Needle showed a plugin that also will do the same thing without the audio. Of course, there's always a plugin for it.
Yeah, always a plugin for it. Yeah, in fact, I've used, and I didn't necessarily want to go into it, like some really handy plugins for getting into the database right from the WordPress, managing files right from WordPress. They work really well, and they're really handy when you just have to go and do something and then delete it. I can look it up if anybody's interested, or maybe that's what you can put in. I'm thinking about it, some of the tools that I use a lot. And one of the websites that I go to a lot, I've gone to this thing for 10 years, is something called viewdns.info. This is just handy to have an idea of what's going on with your domain, what's going on with your IP address. If you start a new site or you move something and you want to look up, like, the propagation, there are all these tools kind of under one tool. I'll copy that. You just put in the domain or IP address, and this is going to tell me that the IP address is properly propagated to all these places. Now, say we move this to a different domain and you were like, hey, it's not always going through. This will show you over time, which ones of these name servers may or may not have your new information. But that's just one of the many tools. So you can come in here. I can go into the classic whois lookup. If you're looking at something, that this is an obfuscated kind of thing where it tells you. But it's just, you just kind of go through all of these different tools. One that I've used for different reasons is the IP history, which kind of gets interesting when someone says, hey, my site I can't get at anymore. And then you do an IP history lookup, and there's this whole list, and you realize that yesterday somebody took over and moved the site somewhere else, and they didn't know because they got hacked or whatever. But this is, or just, again, wanting to check where things are, how things are. This has been on the same address since 2021. A huge list of things. One thing that's kind of interesting is this one here, the reverse IP lookup. You could put in your domain, especially if you're in shared hosting, you might find some really interesting things that you're sharing your IP address with. If I look up this one, basically I'm seeing that this one is on Cloudways. Cloudways gives me an IP address. These are actually all my sites, but but all the sites have the same IP address. But this reverse IP lookup is telling me, that site is at this IP address. But these are all the other sites hosted at that. It can get really interesting when you're looking at something that's hosted on SiteGround shared hosting, and it says, oh, you and 2,000 other websites are hosted at that IP address, which may or may not be something you're concerned with, but it does get interesting when you see who your neighbors are. But so many tools here, and this is I think the record lookup, right? Sometimes you just gotta say, well, what are all of the records that are in there? Maybe I'm working with a client and they've got a question about how stuff works, what's set up at their on their domain name server that points everything. So domain name servers basically says, oh, this address goes to this machine, kind of thing. And you can sometimes you work with someone and you just need to see, but they might not even have access to their DNS servers. I've worked with people where they're working with somebody else who has control over that. And at least this gives me an ability to peek in and see, how their records are set up. And maybe there's something strange, something that's happened, or, oh, you need this because of, email verification or things like that. So you can see, where my records are, and you can tell that, hartfordwp.com is registered with hover.com, which is a domain registrar that I like. I use two. I use Hover and I use Namecheap. But yeah, viewdns.info, chock full of tools that you can look and see. I think they may even have a blacklist test. If not, the other one that is good for that is MX Tools Toolbox, which gives you could put in a domain and you can look up all kinds of things there. Some of these are kind of redundant to that. I think the other interface is just far simpler. But this is where you can also see, let's do this live and see if we're in trouble. HartfordWP.com, and I'm going to look up, do a blacklist check, and see, oh, we're on a blacklist. I have to look into why. But everything else is green except for this one. And I think this one feels like one that I see comes up as a false positive. Maybe it's a positive. I don't know. We'll have to take a look. But tools like this that allow you to kind of see what your domain is doing in the backend. But viewdns.info is definitely a regular tool for me.
Yeah, it's a good one. I probably used I put that on my list too. I've used some other ones like I think Eagle put one in there as well too. Yeah, especially when you're rolling out a new site and you're kind of waiting for it to go live and you're seeing old versions of it. Yeah, these have saved my bacon a couple of times. But even that thing about looking up, seeing where the registrar is, the name servers. I worked with many clients where like they want me to redo their site or something, like, well, who's your current hosting? They don't know, because
they don't know that
the IT whoever built it didn't tell them. They're like, oh, okay, and you have to find out. And oh, wait, you're not on GoDaddy, you're on Network Solutions or something fun like that.
Exactly.
All right, let me grab it back and we'll flip back. I have one or two more, and then oops, can I grab the share? I'll grab it. Replace.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to show. I don't know if this one's geeky or not. I guess it's slightly geeky. Oh yeah, it is. It's sort of sticking with the geeky theme. So this is another plugin that, again, not something I think you always necessarily need installed permanently on a site, but something worthwhile to either on occasion, if you're having some performance related issues, is probably a good one to look at. Or I often use it, as I said, when I'm building a site and then I'm kind of ready to launch it. So this will be like one of my final checklist steps is to run WP Optimize and sort of clean up stuff. But again, even on a site that's been around for a while, it's also good to kind of uncover things that you may not be aware of. So again, WP Optimize, it's in the plugin repository. It's free. There might be a paid version. Who knows these days? It seems like everything has a paid version, but it does a lot of things. But what I tend to use it for is, as I said, kind of final cleanup before I launch a site or going back to a site that may be having some issues. And I kind of want to, clean up unnecessary junk, if you will. So I have this demo site, which I've been using for many of our demos for the past year. So plenty of junk on this one. So I'm going to I installed it. Again, it's just in the repository. Let me activate it. So what it will do is it will put it underneath. I always look for these things. Where is it? Is it underneath tools, underneath settings? Sometimes the easiest thing to do is just go this way. So there, again, it gives you, of course, there's a premium version too. It'll give you a couple of warnings too about things that you want to do. So before you run things, it is always a good idea to kind of do a backup. Make sure you've had a backup run, because some of these tools, they're performance related tools, but they can cause some issues if you don't know what you're doing. If you run something you shouldn't be running. So, but what I tend to do is just really the simple stuff. So again, I use like the database setting in here. So by default, and I don't know if I'll run this today or not, but you can see some of the cleanup things it allows you to do is, for example, if you have a site that it has a lot of blog posts, or again, if you're doing, I was creating a site, so I'd have a lot of draft versions, a lot of old versions of pages, and now I've got the final version of the page. So at this point, all those old revisions are useless to me. So I have 383 post revisions on this. Are they taking up a lot of space? Not really, but it's one of those like just it is taking up space in the database. So there's really no need to keep those old post revisions if you don't need them. There are other ways you can change your WordPress options to keep less versions of post revisions. So for people who aren't familiar, post revisions is basically a way that you can sort of go back to older versions of a poster page. So it's handy, if you've messed something up, it's basically your undo button, if you will. You don't want to limit that too much. You don't want just like no post revisions or 3. I think I tend to leave it at the default, whatever WordPress has. But then it's good to every now and then go back and clean these things up. So as I said, that's one thing you can do. Also, if you have a site that had, previously comments were open or stuff got grabbed as spam or unapproved comments. So if you have all these things kind of sitting around or auto, let's say you have a bunch of draft posts, this is a really handy tool to come in and just delete everything from one place. So at this point, I can just click on either run all, everything is checked off. I'm not going to do it, I don't want to spend the time running it. It may take a little while, depending on your speed of your hosting, how much stuff you have in here. Again, you can do a backup first, probably recommended if you don't have a recent backup, or you can run these individually. So that's one nice feature, is just that database cleanup. Another one, though, under database this is kind of a funny one too, is tables. So you may find that over time, especially if you're like us on these demo sites, you may have installed a lot of plugins that you don't use anymore. Again, it's up to the plugin developer how well they clean up after themselves. Some plugins are notorious for not cleaning up well after themselves. So you may actually have a whole bunch of tables out here for plugins that are really gone. They've been completely uninstalled. Some of these are just not active right now. But as you can see, at one point I was testing Fluent Forms, which is a plugin I like, but shame on that. They didn't remove and clean up after themselves properly. And to be fair to them, they might have, I don't know, maybe they might have had an option when I uninstalled to say, do a full cleaning of them. But it's not taking up a lot of space here. But if you think about this, a site that maybe has a lot of plugins no longer used, or somebody who's testing things over time, this is another way for you to find these orphaned tables. And then again, you can just click on remove and remove the tables from here. So it's nice too. It tells you your entire database size. So as we were saying earlier, if you're not comfortable with going on to MySQL and looking at it, it's a quick way to at least get a general sense of how large are the databases. This isn't telling you file sizes. That's a whole separate thing. This tells you kind of that as well. So this is a really handy tool. There's a lot of other settings in here I won't go through, including like things for, there's some performance stuff in here, which I don't use so much. Images, I think there's some compression stuff in here you can do as well. So again, WP Optimize, kind of a good cleanup tool to be aware of. I'll pass it back.
Yep, that's what I use.
Yep.
All right, I'll show you a couple of things. How's that?
Good. I'm running low on the list here.
Okay. Well, we got 20 minutes or less, and again, if there's any questions, we could stop everything and cover a question. Should we? But I brought this up before. Am I sharing?
Yep, you are.
Okay. I brought this up before, but I'm going to keep promoting them because I like them. Influence WP. Influence WP is a website that is meant to bring attention to like developers and everybody in the WordPress space. And the main guy, who is, let's see, is he here? I forget where he puts his. There's a guy named Ryan, and there's some other people that work there, and you can get. If you had a product to sell, you can get involved with this for no charge. His whole goal is to have kind of no nonsense look at WordPress plugins, themes, paid things, but have an unbiased look at it. Make sure that if there's a deal that he's presenting, and they have deals here, that it's a deal that is kind of a best deal that you can have without, so you're not saying, oh, here's an affiliate link with a certain amount, then you click on it, you go to the website, and they have it for even less, or do all kinds of shenanigans. Like, he works with people that say, all right, if you're going to give me a deal price, like a coupon code, the people who are using my site, they can't go to your site and then find it for less, because you're doing different types of things with your pricing. So it's meant to kind of keep everything on the up and up. And the guy Ryan, one of the things that he does, he's got a YouTube channel, Influence WP, on YouTube, where he does very just unvarnished looks at the things that he's presenting on the site, and the software that the people he's working with are putting out there, and just saying what it looks like. Here's a great one, by the way, Termageddon. I would put that on tips and tricks. Termageddon is a how do they best word it? Termageddon.com website policies that automatically update. So if you've got your privacy policies and all, it ties back to their server, so the legal language is updated and all. The pricing is very reasonable, depending on the size of the company and all. But for $120 a year, if you're a business and you want to make sure that your code is up, but not to go off on that tangent, but if you want to learn more about it at Influence WP, this is where he kind of covers it and goes over it. So that's a nice if you're looking for like sources for sort of honest information about plugins and tools, I like them. There was a question about blacklisting. I put a note in the chat about it, and then Eagle shared this link to us about spam rats, which we showed up on, and how to go through a removal process. If you find yourself on lists and you've either fixed what the problem is. I had a client who they caused the problem because they were sending out lots and lots of unsolicited emails, and they had to kind of stop doing that and manage how they did that. But then to get off the list, you need to go through processes, say, hey, we've cleaned up our act, or we changed the thing that we need to change, that type of stuff. I will show you a couple things that I kind of go-to things. So this is the back end of Hartford WP, and I've got two plugins that I like: analytics, independent analytics, and simple history. And here you can see them in action. So the simple history plugin, when it's active on the site, it basically just kind of keeps track of what's going on your site. And here's content that I changed, and it's telling me 2 hours ago I went in and I changed this content. And also this, I put this image up, and you can kind of go through just a view of what's been going on in the site. If something happened automatically, it'll land up here. This becomes really handy if you've got multiple users on a website and something happens and you want to try to figure out how and who something happened. So simple history as a plugin is a great tool for that. And then on the analytics side, independent analytics is great because it, and I know we've talked about this before, but it is a way of getting analytics without having to do the Google Analytics, the setup, there's can be privacy issues with Google Analytics in some cases where it's like, you're kind of sending everything to Google. In this case, it all stays. It's weirdly the good old days of anybody who started developing websites from the beginning of the website time, which included me. The whole log analysis where we get the logs and look at the number of hits and things like that. This is looking at keeping track of data locally, but you get a nice interface to seeing what's going on, but it's all happening on your site at the server level. So I'm a big fan of independent analytics, and I'll show you one other one that it kind of is a go-to, which is the accessibility checker. If I've got let's just say I'm looking at this post here that I've got, right? So when you come through, this is my content. My Slim SEO is running, so that's what's at the bottom for some of my search engine optimization stuff. I can demo that, or for people who haven't seen it. But if I activate accessibility checker, let that activate. Now, if I refresh on the edit side, at the bottom of the screen will be my accessibility score. It's looking for things in and it's doing it live on a per post as you're working on a post. This is a very simple site, so it's giving me an idea of there's 4 warnings. So if I were to look at the warnings, then I can get into this. And okay, we mentioned at the beginning called ARIA. So it's telling me where the code is, what I might need to look for. I can check something as no, that's okay. Duplicate alternative text is another warning. It's not necessarily an error, but it's saying, hey, I've got alt text that might say the same thing. It happens to be on the logo there, and I could fix, adjust it, or say no, that's fine. I'm not, link opens in a new window or tab. Now that's kind of important to at least pay attention to, which is basically saying, and this happens to be a cadence link. It's probably at the bottom of the page. I hadn't changed the footer, but it's going target equals blank, which opens up a new window. Well, in accessibility, if you open up a new window without telling the user that they've opened up a new window, that is considered an accessibility no-no, because you're kind of taking over somebody's browser and saying, oh, I'm opening up a new tab for you, and now you're over there, and if you hit back, you can't go back. You have to go to the other tab. So best practice is to let them know. But what's fantastic about Accessibility Checker is the explanations about what's wrong goes into great detail, and in fact, you can even dig deeper into all the information that they have on their website, which I just did, and it's telling me, okay, links open a new window, and here's all the reasons why you want to pay attention to it. Unbelievable to me what's happening with the information that they're providing. This is the free version. They do have a paid version, which does more and does bulk checking and things like that. And the last thing about this that's kind of very cool is if I go look on the front end, they added this last year, the year before. While it's running, I have my accessibility checker in the bottom right. If I click on that, it's telling me this has 0 errors, 4 warnings, and then I can kind of go through and see where the warnings are. It's going to tell me, oh, up here I have a area. So the arrow down is not properly indicating something that maybe this is, again, a warning, not an error. But on the front end, you can look to see, and this is the Cadence WP link opens, so you can see where it is. So fantastic plugin for staying on top of accessibility in your website. I recommend it highly.
Peter, what was the name of it again? It was Accessibility Checker.
Yeah, this is the one. So we were talking before about the Accessibility WordPress meetup group. The person that the company that heads that up is Equalize Digital. This is their plugin. Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah, even like so just for the learning, for the documentation and all that.
Oh yeah, the documentation is just fantastic, and it really gets into a level of detail of explaining everything. So I'll put the link to the free version that is in the repository, and then from there you can look at their website and all the information they have there, all the documentation, things like that on the website.
Awesome.
You want to keep going, or you got anything
else?
I'm
gonna do one last one, very quick one too. But again, this is one of those why isn't it there already in WordPress? But just again, these are my notes from things I was working on the past week or so since we announced this topic. So this is a really simple one too, but comes in handy. And again, it's one of those things like if you don't know such things exist, again, you don't know what you don't know. Like Peter says, there's a plugin for everything, which is very true. But this is like again, so sometimes you run into this issue, whether it's custom post types or a blog post or something like, one of the things that's a pain is, in general, you can change it through filtering and through your query, etc. But in general, posts do display based on a date range. So what if I don't want that? And again, I'm disconsidering or not considering things like sticky posts and all those other kind of things. But what if I want to change the order of my posts? In general, there's clunky ways you can do that. So for example, if I was in my dashboard, as I showed earlier, you can trick things by changing the published dates and all that, but that's just a pain in the neck. Like, let's say I want, I just want to switch the order of these things. Well, again, there's a plugin for that. It's called Post Types Order. This one is current. A lot of active installations. Very simple plugin to use. I'll show it. It's just be like a minute thing to show it the most. And again, I've used this both for post types and custom post types too. So I have another site where I have some custom post types for like a team. So it's very easy just to move things around. So I want the president at the top and the vice president below, and that kind of thing. So just really simple way to do that. So when you install this plugin, one of the first things it does, so this is again my demo site, you can say where you want this to show, either showing everything, or, it's basically looking at most things that are either like custom post types. Like this is our demo site, so we have the dog custom post type. But I'll show what it looks like under posts. So once you install it and activate it, I think you just need to save the settings. You have to look at the settings page and save everything. But at this point now, once it's turned on, underneath my posts, I have a new option here called reorder. So if I go to reorder, as you can see, as I hover over these, it switches to a little cross here. So, and so I can switch around the order. So let's say I want to move news story 5. I'm going to flip the order of these. Let's say I'm going to make it 5, 4, 3, just like that, and hit update. So now they've been updated, and just to prove that, if I go back to this site, and visit my site, and I go to the news, there we go. So 5, 4, 3, voila. Really simple, again, but save it. If you think about it, you have a site that has a ton of stuff and you want to, resurface up an old blog post, or especially custom post types. That's where I've used it the most. So really, really handy, really, really simple thing. Post types order. Great little plugin. Just does what it says, over 12 million downloads. So that's
and
a quick one.
The pro version, is fairly cheap, and it's worth it because you can also set up rules so that you don't have to manually, because every time you add a post, it puts it at, you have to go in and reorder again. So it's the pro version, you can set up rules to say, set it up by a category, set it up by a date, whatever. But makes it well worth the price. It's pretty reasonable.
Yeah, it's funny. All these like little tools that sometimes it's like it's worth it. Whatever it costs, it's like if that solves you, the problem of your time and everything, it's worth supporting. So that's the last one I had. I only got like 5 minutes, and we need to save some for the summer. So
yeah, no, this is true, and it's funny because you ended on something where I use something like that, not only for posts, but I use something called custom taxonomy order.
Oh, yeah.
Which comes in really handy when I'm doing things like in this, a specific thing that I'm doing is, and this is in the category, and maybe we'll bring this up during summer school, right? Is using WordPress for things that you might not have thought you could use WordPress for. I built a project management system for a friend of mine using WordPress. And one of the things is filtering projects, but the order of the project. So it, just think of it like beginning, middle, and end, for lack of a better thing. But I could change the order by dragging and dropping the taxonomies, which changes the menu order so that then I can do my outputs of things based on those, so it gets grouped properly. So sometimes you go in and go, oh, I don't want to do it alphabetically, date descending, those kind of default things. And then having these custom ordering of things plugins can be really handy. So that's one I've used. All right, we're almost at the top of the hour. So
yeah, I think we're done with our jamboree of everything but the kitchen sink. So thanks everyone for joining. So as we've been saying, Norm, we're going to be on our summer school session. So we're still going to be meeting the next 3 months. But really, it's going to be kind of like this. This is early summer. You get a deal. What we'd really love too is if you have a site, your site or a friend's site that you have access to that you want us to look at or want any advice on, anything like that. We love doing that. We really do. It could be for anything. It could be performance things, or just general design issues, things like that, or questions you have, or just want a second set of eyes. If you're willing to be a guinea pig, we'd love to do that during our summer sessions as well. Or again, if there's other things you're interested in, topics, feel free to reach out to us, let us know. otherwise, this is kind of what our summer school sessions are going to be like. So again, we look forward to seeing you all there, and thanks everyone for joining and hanging on through the end. Hopefully you got something new. I always get something out of, Peter always has a tool or something that I learned, and it's great to hear from everyone else things that you guys use. So like I said, everyone have a good night, and we'll see you next month. Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.